Have you ever walked out into your garden early in the morning when the light is soft and the air is still and felt that quiet mix of love and frustration at the same time? You look at your plants, proud of them, but your back reminds you of the heavy bags you hauled last season. The weeds you pulled just last week are already poking through again. And for a moment you wonder, why does something I enjoy so much have to take so much work? Let me ask you this. What if you could protect your soil, shut down weeds before they even show up, and keep the ground moist for days without lifting a single bag of mulch ever again? What if your garden could take care of itself while you spent more time simply enjoying it? Here's the part most gardeners don't know. Nature already built the perfect system for this. You don't need special tools or expensive products. You just need two simple seeds that do all the heavy lifting for you. Stay with me, because once you hear how this works, you may never go back to store-bought mulch again. Most of us started using mulch because it made sense. It keeps the soil moist, it slows down weeds, it helps regulate the temperature around our plants so the roots do not get stressed by the heat or the cold. For years, it has been the standard way to protect a garden bed. But over time, many gardeners begin to notice the side of mulch that no one really talks about. It breaks down far too quickly. You spread it in spring, enjoy it for a few weeks, and then before you know it, the soil starts showing through again. That means more bags, more money, and the same heavy work all over again. And sometimes those bags are not even fresh. Have you ever opened one and smelled that sour, swampy scent? That is mulch that has already started to rot in the wrong way, and instead of feeding your soil, it can harm it. And then there is the issue of thick layers. We all want good coverage, but when mulch sits too heavy on the soil, water struggles to reach the roots. Instead of helping your plants, it can suffocate them. Even lighter organic options like grass clippings or straw only last a short while. They decompose so fast that you end up topping them up week after week. For younger gardeners, this is tiring but manageable. For seniors or anyone dealing with back or knee pain, this cycle is exhausting. The lifting, the bending, the hauling over and over again can turn a peaceful hobby into a chore. So it leaves us with a simple question. Is there a smarter way to garden as we get older? A way that helps the soil without draining our energy? The good news is yes, and the answer has been sitting in every natural forest around us for centuries. Close your eyes for a moment and picture yourself walking through a forest after a gentle rain. The air feels cool and clean. The ground beneath your feet is soft and spongy, almost like a cushion. You can smell that deep, earthy scent that only healthy soil gives off. Fallen leaves, tiny twigs, little pieces of plants all lie on the ground, slowly breaking down and becoming part of the earth again. No one is out there spreading mulch. No one is dragging bags of bark through the trees. The forest takes care of itself. When you look a little closer, you realize something important. The soil in a forest stays moist. It stays fertile. It stays alive year after year without any human work. And the reason is simple. Nature uses what we call living mulch. These are plants that grow low to the ground, protect the soil while they're alive, and then gently decompose right where they stand to feed the earth.
This is very different from dead mulch. Dead mulch just sits on top of the soil. Living mulch breathes, grows, shades, and nourishes. It is part of the ecosystem instead of something placed on top of it. And here is the beautiful part. If nature can do all of this on its own, then we can borrow that wisdom for our own gardens. So the real question becomes this. How do we bring that forest magic into our backyards and let the soil take care of itself the same way? Living mulch is one of the simplest and most natural ways to protect and heal your soil. Instead of putting down dead material like bark or straw, you use soft, fast-growing plants that take care of the ground while they are alive and then feed it when their life cycle ends. These plants grow low and gentle. They shade the soil, protect it during heavy rain, and help keep moisture where your plants need it most. As they grow, their roots move through the earth and break up compacted layers that have been hard for years. They create little pathways that air and water can travel through. And something amazing happens right at the root tips. These plants release natural sugars that feed billions of tiny microbes living underground. Those microbes wake up, multiply, and turn plain dirt into rich, dark, crumbly soil full of life. This is where your garden begins to feel different. The soil starts acting like a living sponge. When you hold it in your hand, it does not clump or feel heavy. It breaks apart softly and stays moist much longer than before. That means less watering, fewer weeds, and stronger, healthier roots. But it is important to choose the right plants. Some ground covers spread too aggressively. Others rob nutrients from your vegetables or attract pests. That is why two specific plants stand above the rest. Two gentle workhorses that farmers, homesteaders, and gardeners use to build incredible soil with almost no effort. The first one is a soft, feathery beauty that brings bees, butterflies, and healthier soil everywhere it grows. Let me introduce you to Phacelia. If you've never seen it before, imagine a plant that looks like it belongs in a peaceful meadow at sunrise. Its leaves are delicate and fern-like. Its stems are light and airy. And when it blooms, the flowers unfurl into soft lavender curls that bees absolutely love. It is so gentle, so elegant, that many gardeners grow it simply for its beauty. But Phacelia is far more than a pretty flower. It is one of the finest living mulches you can grow. It sprouts quickly, often within 10 days, and spreads into a soft cushion of green that protects your soil from the sun and keeps weeds from taking over. It never becomes invasive. It stays exactly where you sow it and asks for almost nothing in return. Under the surface, Phacelia is doing quiet but powerful work. Its roots travel deep, loosening hard soil that has been compacted for years. They pull nutrients upward and make them available to your vegetables. Above the ground, those purple blooms bring in a rush of pollinators. Tomatoes, cucumbers, squash, beans, and so many other crops produce better when Phacelia is nearby. The life cycle is simple and gentle. First the seeds sprout, then the leaves thicken, soon the purple flowers open and the bees arrive, and when the plant reaches its full growth, that is the perfect moment to return it to the soil. Do not pull it out, simply cut it down while the stems are still green and tender. Lay the cut pieces on the ground or mix them lightly into the top layer of your soil, no deeper than a few centimeters. That shallow space is where the soil microbes live, and they will break Phacelia down quickly.
Within a short time, you will see the difference. Your soil becomes darker and softer. It begins to crumble instead of clumping. Weeds slow down. Moisture stays in the soil longer, and you will feel, right under your fingertips, that your garden has started to breathe again. Phacelia is gentle, forgiving, and incredibly effective. Once you see what it does for your soil, it becomes hard to imagine gardening without it. Now let's talk about the second plant, buckwheat. If Phacelia is the gentle healer, buckwheat is the quick helper that shows up, gets the job done, and never causes trouble. It is one of the easiest crops you can grow. It is not fussy. It does not demand rich soil or constant watering. It simply grows. And it grows fast. Speed is buckwheat's special gift. While most plants take their time, buckwheat rushes into action. It can germinate in just a week. Within days, you will see a flush of green, and before long, it spreads into a thick, leafy blanket that covers the soil completely. That dense cover is what makes it so effective at stopping weeds. It grows so quickly and so close together that weeds cannot even find a place to sprout. But buckwheat offers something even more valuable. As it grows, it pulls phosphorus and other minerals up from the deeper layers of the soil. These nutrients are often trapped where vegetable roots cannot reach them. Buckwheat brings them to the surface. Then, when it breaks down, it returns those minerals right back into the topsoil, where your plants can finally use them. It also works wonders for poor or sandy soil. The roots do not travel very deep, but they spread wide and create a gentle web that helps the soil hold moisture and air. In just one season, even the driest bed starts to feel softer and more alive. When it's time to return buckwheat to the earth, timing makes all the difference. The best moment to cut it is right when the first flower buds appear, but before they fully open. That is when the stems are tender and full of nutrients. If you wait until the plant gets older, it becomes woody and slower to decompose. To recycle it back into your soil, simply cut it down at the base and leave the pieces on top like a natural compost layer, or mix them gently into the top few centimeters of earth. Do not bury them deep. The microbes near the surface will break it down quickly and cleanly.
And there's a lovely bonus. Buckwheat's tiny white blossoms attract bees and butterflies just as eagerly as Phacelia does. Your garden becomes more alive, filled with movement and color, while the increase in beneficial insects helps keep pests in balance naturally. It's a simple plant with a generous spirit, fast, helpful, and reliable. Now, here's where the real magic happens. Phacelia and buckwheat are wonderful on their own, but when you let them share the same garden bed, they create something far more powerful than the sum of their parts. Phacelia grows tall and feathery, like a gentle guardian shading the soil from above. Buckwheat stays lower, filling in the empty spaces quickly and spreading into a thick, leafy blanket that blocks weeds and keeps the ground cool. Together, they cover every inch of soil. There is no wasted space, no room for weeds, no bare ground drying out in the sun. Below the surface, they work as partners too. Buckwheat's shallow roots spread wide, holding moisture near the top. Phacelia's deeper roots travel further down, loosening the layers that have been compacted for years. One builds structure, the other builds depth, and your garden benefits from both. When you plant them together, your soil begins to feel different, softer, cooler, more alive. You will water less often, your vegetables will grow stronger, and your garden will maintain a gentle balance that feels almost effortless. There are a few simple ways to sow them. You can scatter the seeds together in one handful and let them mix naturally. You can plant them in alternating rows between your vegetables, or you can use them to fill an empty bed and prepare it for the next season. There is no need for perfect spacing. Nature does not plant in straight lines, and these two plants certainly do not need them. And here is something I want you to picture. You and I standing in your garden a few weeks after you sow them. You look down and see a green carpet where bare soil used to be. The air feels cooler. The plants look stronger. And you suddenly realize your garden is finally working with you, not against you. That is the gift of pairing Phacelia and buckwheat. A simple partnership that turns your soil into a living, breathing ecosystem. A garden that protects itself, feeds itself, and becomes easier for you to care for with every passing season. Something almost magical happens when you cut Phacelia and buckwheat and lay the pieces right on top of your soil. It looks simple from the outside. You cut the plants, you leave them there. But underneath, the soil begins a quiet transformation. The roots that once held the plants upright start to break down, and as they do, they leave behind tiny hollow pathways. These little tunnels let air and water slip deeper into the soil than they could before. It's like opening windows in a house that has been closed for far too long. And living right inside those tunnels are the real workers in your garden. Tiny friendly creatures with names that sound almost like characters in a story. Bacteria like bacillus, helpful fungi like trichoderma. They wake up when fresh plant material reaches the surface. They multiply, they move, they begin turning those green stems and leaves into rich humus. They're not scary or complicated. They are the quiet helpers that forests rely on every day. This is why you never want to dig the plants deep into the soil. Down below there is less air, and those helpful microbes cannot work well without it. When you keep everything near the surface, the organisms that need oxygen stay alive and active. They work faster. They break things down cleanly. They build soil the way nature builds it, slow, steady, and beautiful. If you want to give them a little boost, you can sprinkle something simple like compost tea or a mild microbial spray over the cut plants. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive, just a gentle drink that introduces even more beneficial organisms. Seniors love this step because it is light work. A watering can, a little tea, and you're done. And the most important thing to remember is this. You are not just improving your soil for one season, you are starting a long-term process of healing. Every time you grow these plants and return them to the soil, you add more organic matter. You invite more life beneath the surface. You make your garden easier to care for every year. This is not a quick fix. It is a slow, natural investment that pays you back with less work and more joy. After one season of using Phacelia and buckwheat as living mulch, your garden will begin to feel different. And I say feel because this is not just something you see with your eyes. It is something you experience. The soil will become darker and softer. When you pick it up, it will crumble gently through your fingers instead of turning into hard clumps. You will notice that it smells richer too, almost like a forest floor after a morning rain. Water will sink into the soil more easily and stay there longer. That means you won't need to water nearly as often, which is a blessing for any gardener, especially seniors who don't want to drag hoses around the yard in the heat. Weeds will not disappear completely, but they will be fewer and much easier to pull. Some will slide right out with a gentle tug because the soil has loosened so much. And your vegetables and flowers will tell their own story. Their roots will grow deeper, their stems will grow stronger, their leaves will stay greener even in dry spells. You will see a difference in the health of every plant because the soil is no longer fighting against them. It is supporting them.
But the biggest change often happens inside you. When the garden asks less of your back and more of your presence, the whole experience becomes calmer. You spend more time walking slowly between the beds, noticing small things, a new bloom, a bee resting on a flower, a coolness to the soil when you touch it. There is less stress, less hurry, and more time to simply enjoy the space you created. And for older gardeners, this shift means everything. You no longer need to avoid the garden because of sore knees or a stiff back. You can keep gardening the way you love without the heavy lifting. You get to enjoy the beauty of your plants without paying the price in pain later. I remember the first season I tried this method myself. Before that, my soil was tired. It felt dry and stubborn, and every time I dug into it, I could feel how hard it had become. I would spend hours spreading mulch, only to watch weeds return like they owned the place. But after planting those 2 simple seeds, everything changed. By midsummer, the weeds had slowed. The soil felt soft again. My tomatoes grew taller than they had in years. And when I walked barefoot across one of my beds one evening, I could feel the difference under my feet. Cool, springy, alive. It was the first time in a long time that my garden felt effortless. And that is when I knew this was not just a gardening trick. It was a return to the way nature wanted things all along. When you are ready to try this in your own garden, start simple. Begin by choosing a bed or a small area you want to improve. It does not have to be perfect or freshly tilled. Just pick a spot where you would like the soil to feel softer and more alive. Clear away any large weeds or dried stalks, but do not dig deep. You want to protect the natural layers of the soil as much as possible. Next, take a small container and mix your Phacelia and buckwheat seeds together. A handful of each is usually enough for most beds. You do not need to measure anything. Nature does not worry about exact numbers, and you do not need to either. Once the seeds are mixed, walk slowly across your garden and scatter them by hand. Let them fall evenly, almost like feeding birds in the park. When the seeds are down, water gently. Think of it as a soft rain, not a heavy shower. You want to moisten the surface without washing the seeds away. Then step back and let the garden do the rest. In about a week or so, you will see small green shoots rising. Give them time. Soon they will form a soft green carpet that begins to protect your soil. When the plants reach the right stage, cut them down and return them to the soil. You do not have to dig deep. Simply lay the cut stems on the surface or mix them lightly into the very top layer. That is enough to let the microbes get to work. This method works beautifully in raised beds, containers, and even small patio gardens. If you have large garden plots, you can scatter the seeds in wide sweeps across the surface. And if you live in a warm climate, planting in early spring and again in late summer helps your living mulch establish quickly. For cooler areas, spring plantings usually do best. Here's a little pro tip. If you want even better results, toss a tiny handful of compost over the seeds before watering. Not much, just enough to give the young shoots a friendly start. And if you want to keep things easy, water early in the morning so the soil can hold that moisture throughout the day.
Now, before you begin, it helps to know a few gentle warnings. The first is to avoid planting your living mulch too close to very hungry crops when it is still young. Plants like corn or pumpkins can overshadow the seedlings before they get established. Give the living mulch a little space at first, and once it has rooted well, it can grow beside almost anything. Another common mistake is overwatering. It is easy to think that more water equals faster growth, but these plants prefer a moderate amount. Too much water makes their stems weak and slows the whole process. And when it comes time to return the plants to the soil, resist the urge to till them deep. Deep digging buries the stems where there is less air, making decomposition slower and less effective. And one more thing. Do not give up too early. The first few weeks might seem slow, especially if you are used to instant results. But nature works at her own pace. What begins quietly on the surface becomes something powerful beneath your feet in time. If something goes a little wrong, do not worry. Gardens are forgiving places. They adjust, they heal, and they teach us how to slow down and pay attention. The key is to observe and adjust gently, letting the garden guide you instead of trying to control every step. Once you begin gardening this way, something shifts. You start to feel the rhythm that has been part of nature long before we came along. The garden becomes more than just rows of plants. It becomes a community. Every root, every insect, every drop of water playing a small but important part in the whole system. Living mulch is not just about improving your soil. It is about learning patience again. It is about letting the earth teach you how to move slowly and be present. Seniors understand this more than anyone. Age brings wisdom. It teaches us when to act and when to step back. This method honors that wisdom. It lets you garden with more ease, more grace, and far less strain on your body. And it brings back that deep joy that comes when the garden finally feels like a partner, not a chore. So before you lift another heavy bag of mulch, try something gentler. Scatter a handful of seeds in just one small patch. Watch how the soil changes over a few weeks. Notice the color, the texture, the way the plants seem happier. And pay attention to how you feel too. Maybe a little more relaxed, maybe a little more connected. If this message has helped you, if it has given you even one moment of clarity, I invite you to take the next step. Like this video so more gardeners can find it. Share it with a friend who is tired of bending and hauling and wants something easier. And subscribe for more simple, nature-based gardening tips made especially for seniors who know that growing never truly stops. And as always, from all of us here at Golden Seniors, thank you for joining me on this journey. May your soil grow richer, your garden grow gentler, and your spirit feel lighter with every season you spend close to the earth.